Trade reports continue to escalate surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs and Nick Robertson following his trade request out of Toronto earlier on in this offseason. And new reports have revealed a new trade destination that the Leafs could be looking to move Nick Robertson to. So we're going to dive into that report and discuss what the report entails and what the potential trade could be for the Leafs forward. So we're gonna break all that down this episode. But before we do, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed, make sure to hit that button. I'm still on a cruise ship. We're a couple days away from me being back to my normal setup, so bear with the quality and the camera and the mic in the meantime. But thank you guys for your continued support. Darius, a lot to go over today, and again, I'm on a cruise and I wanted to get this out because this is a very interesting report that we're going to be discussing. It's surrounding Nick Robertson, and we've been talking about him a lot because, quite frankly, he's probably the next domino to fall if there is a trade going down this offseason. And the Mitch Marner trade talks have kind of quieted down. They could pick back up, but for now, it's surrounding Nick Robertson because Mitch Marner didn't request a trade. Nick Robertson did request a trade. And let's just dive right into it, Darius. Could the Golden Knights be a potential destination for Maple Leafs Nick Robertson? You obviously know that the young winger has reportedly requested a trade, and Adam Perteau of the Hockey News believes the Vegas Golden Knights would be a great destination for him. Now, Darius, this is very interesting, and I want to get your opinion on it. We'll pop you in right there. So some very interesting things here. The Vegas Golden Knights are a team that obviously, since they came into the NHL, they've really been winning a lot. They've been winning. They've been doing very good. And Nick Robertson, if you're a Leafs fan, this is a little bit of a scary team to trade him to because he could haunt them for years to come, especially given their success in their brief time in the NHL. And what are your thoughts on this?
So we've gone through a lot of Nick Robertson trades and trade scenarios, right? And this one, when I saw this in this article, this one almost makes the most sense for me for both parties because the return you're going to get if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we'll get to it in a second, makes a lot of sense if Nick Robertson does not want to return and does not want to re-sign. And on the Vegas Golden Knights side of things, like you said, he's going to come back to haunt the Toronto Maple Leafs if he does go to the Vegas Golden Knights. But at the end of the day, if he doesn't want to play for Toronto, I mean, he has no real leverage, right? I think at the end of the day, they're going to try and salvage this relationship and have him play under Berube and try it, right? I think that's what the route they're going to go. But if he were to go to Vegas, he would absolutely light it up. This is a perfect player for Vegas, and Vegas didn't do much in free agency either. So they're looking for scoring help, and Nick Robertson can score, right? That's one thing we know he can do. So very interesting proposition here. And I think it kind of makes sense for both teams in a way, but I think if you're the Leafs, you would want to hang on to Nick Robertson unless the relationship is absolutely destroyed. But I don't think it's quite there yet.
No, I think they have some hopefully some rekindling to do, especially over the next few weeks as the regular season begins to approach. But yeah, let's dive into what the package should be. And the reason they think this is such a good fit is you can see here currently the Leafs haven't said they'll be moving on from Robertson as they are likely looking to fix the relationship before exploring a trade. With Craig Berube coming in to be the head coach, maybe he sees a different role for Robertson because we know that Keefe obviously didn't see the role that Nick Robertson had with the team as he was kind of put in the doghouse a ton. And you can see this here. The Knights are currently over the cap ceiling, but that hasn't stopped the proactive GM from making moves before. And the Leafs would be satisfied with one of the Golden Knights' second rounders, and Robertson would be much closer to home than he is in Toronto. So there's one framework that's surrounding a second round pick. There's also some other stuff with a prospect. You can see here Robertson and current Golden Knights prospect Brandon Brisson have quite similarities, and very interesting there. Their offensive game is obviously built around their shot. They both have great shots, and we'll get into stats in a second. But what are your thoughts on this? Maybe a second round pick, a prospect, something like that, because so far the packages we've seen for Nick Robertson have been underwhelming. So, third round picks, fourth round picks. I'd like to see a decent prospect in a player, or a decent prospect in an okay pick, sorry. But again, who knows what Nick Robertson value is at this point.
Yeah, I think if you go the pick route, like picks are magic beans. You don't know what they are at this point, but we just saw another trade a couple of days ago with the Edmonton Oilers where they did, a first rounder from just a couple of years ago, right? Just to see if there's a spark there too, because clearly it wasn't working for either team with them and the Ottawa Senators. So they traded two prospects to see if they can ignite something in either one of them on new teams. And I think this could be the case for the Vegas Golden Knights and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Although if you're trading Nick Robertson to the Vegas Golden Knights on paper right away, Nick Robertson's player, right? If you look at, I don't know if it's Brisson or Brisson. There's two ways I don't know how it's pronounced, but if you look at his stats, he's great in the AHL, right? Like almost a point a game player in the AHL. He's still relatively young, hard to do. Former first round pick from the for the Vegas Golden Knights as well. So pretty good young player, right? Hasn't really showed it at the NHL level. I think Nick Robertson has. He's just been in the doghouse under Keefe the last couple seasons. So it's an interesting swap where if Nick Robertson absolutely does not want to come back and you have to trade this player, although I still think he has no leverage. then I think this is an interesting swap because you get a younger player in return who does have some upside, can play in the NHL because he has played in the NHL. He's starting to. So interesting proposition, that's for sure.
Yeah, and let's dive into what that could look like. And obviously, you can see here the Leafs might get a decent prospect instead of a draft pick, whatever the case may be. Vegas will be adding a potential 20 to 25 goal scorer per season without taking anything off the NHL roster. And that's obviously why it makes a ton of sense for them. Win-win for both teams, though, because you can see you can get a young prospect to pair with Easton Cowan and Fraser Minton in that group. And you're looking at Nick Robertson. We've done this before. 27 points, 14 goals in 56 games. And again, this was in a very limited role. Really, I mean, Nick Robertson was put in a very tough spot this season, given him, playing half the time, getting sat a bunch, healthy scratched a bunch. It's not only hard for anyone to do that, but a young player with that mindset is a bit rough. And you're looking at Brendan Brisson, I'm going to go with that pronunciation, 8 points in 15 games, also didn't play much as well. And you look at the age is very, very similar. So some very interesting similarities there, but I think it could be a win-win from both teams, like the article kind of suggests here. And I don't know, Brisson's an interesting guy. He's not as good as the skater if you're unfamiliar with him as Robertson, as the article says, but has a bigger frame and can get him in a better spot. So you're taking and you're getting some things back with these guys. But I think overall it would be a pretty decent trade and makes a ton of sense for Nick Robertson, especially because I'm not exactly sure how many other teams would be willing to give up tons of players or picks for Nick Robertson, who's yet to prove it at the NHL level, even though he has proved it in other leagues below the NHL.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either, but I do think there's a lot of upside to Nick Robertson. I think he would do really well in another team, maybe 20 to 25 goal scorer, like we alluded to just a few minutes ago. So I think teams would be, if he's available, I think some teams would want a player like this, including Vegas, they haven't done much in free agency, right? They could use some more scoring on the wings, especially. So it's an interesting trade-off. I don't think Brisson would, do as well at the NHL level, right away like Nick Robertson can. But he is definitely, if you were to have him coming up with Easton Cowan and Fraser Minton, guys like that, kind of the new crop of players, I think he would fit right in. I think he could be an interesting little trade-off here for Nick Robertson because, his production, 8 points in 15 games is not bad, right? Especially just coming into the NHL for the first time. That was his first, chance in the NHL. And obviously the coach there in Vegas trusting him a little bit because he was averaging over 10 minutes, which Nick Robertson barely was. So there's that to look at too. And he's a bigger player than Nick Robertson too, right? I don't want to put too much into that because you're not going to trade a bunch of skill just for a guy who's bigger, but he's a little bit bigger. And if he's more responsible on each end, like the neutral zone and the defensive zone, this could be an interesting trade because Berube is a guy who likes players he can trust. Right. And if Nick Robertson doesn't end up being that, I still think there's a lot there. You can work with him. But if that doesn't end up being the case, this could be an interesting trade.
Yeah, let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on the trade. Does it make sense for the Leafs? Do you like it? And I think it's one of the better trade packages we've seen so far. At least one of the more realistic ones for the Leafs and Nick Robertson. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know. We'll see you soon.